We begin today at the Mishnah on Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph, right at the top of the Amud. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, Heyid Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgede. Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgede testified and he brought the following halachas. Ala chareshes, on a wife that is deaf, mute, sheisia avia, well, she's a woman that's deaf, mute, sheisia avia, her father married her off. Now when her father marries her off, this marriage, this kedushin, takes effect min atayra. A father has a koyach to marry off his daughter, a katana, or here, this woman or this daughter, which is a chareshes, deaf mute. She yaitze beget. So she could be divorced by her husband with a get, just like any regular divorce. What's the reason for this? So Rashi explains, because when it comes to Gedishin, as we'll see later in the Masechta as well, so you need the husband to agree to give the get, but you do not need the das of the woman to receive the get at all. So therefore, even though she's deaf mute, and therefore she has no das, she can be divorced. Another halach, he said, Val katana, bas Yisrael. A katana, that's a bas Yisrael, shenisas l'kayin. She was married to a kayin, and here, this is not talking about a case where her father married her off. It's not a proper marriage min hatayra. Rather, she was a yisaima, and her mother or her brothers married her off, which is a takana midrabanan that they can marry her off. So she's married now to a kayin. So a wife of a kayin could eat the truma of the kayin. Sheicheles betruma. So Chachamim instituted for her that she should be allowed to eat truma. And Rashi here says that it's only talking about truma midrabanan. Not truma min hatayra, she won't be allowed to eat. Truma midrabanan, they were misaking for her for this marriage, which was a marriage midrabanan. Ve'emesa, another takana chacham wa misakin, ve'emesa, if she passes away, baila yarsha. This husband that married her, even though it's not a marriage min hatayra, and really min hatayra, the ones that should inherit her should be her relatives, nevertheless, her husband here is the one that inherits her. Another takana, this Mishnah here is a hemshach to all the previous Mishnayos that brings various different takanas midrabanan. Va'al ha-meidish ha-gozel, and a beam of wood that was stolen, shabonai bibira, that was built into a house or into a big building, sheyitel as domov, that he only has to pay the money for it. The owner of this beam can't come to the ganev and say, return to me this actual beam itself. So they said, no, he only has to pay money for this, and not the beam itself he can keep. And the reason for this is, it's a takana to make it easier for a person to do tshuva. If a person wants to do tshuva, and you're going to force him to take apart the building in order to take out this beam, he's not going to want to do tshuva. Mm-hmm. The final takana was valchatos agzula. If a person stole an animal, and then he dedicated it as a korban chatos, if nobody knows that this is stolen, shehi mechaperes. Chachama were mesakin that it should be mechaper. Mipnei tikun hamizbeach, and this was done as a takana for the sake of the mizbeach. The Gemara will explain what's the purpose of this takana. Sagt the Gemara, Omar Rave said, me'edusay shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgede, from the testimony of Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgede, the first halacha of our Mishnah, that you can give a get to a chareshes. She's deaf mute and she has no idea what's going on, so that we can learn out the following halacha. Omar le'edim.
She got married.
She was not a chareshes when she got married. She got married, let's say it was a full, or as I mentioned before, Rashi said her father married her off. Her father can marry her off, and it's a good condition. So if he says to Eidim, Ru'u get zeh shani noisin lo. Here, this is, look, this is a get that I'm giving to my wife. But then, when he actually gives her the get, he tells his wife when he's giving it to her, Kinsi shtar choiv zeh. Here, take this document of a loan. He's not even telling her that it's a get, and she takes it into her hand, not knowing what it is that she's getting into her hand, that she's becoming divorced right now. Nevertheless, harezim ugereshes. The gedishin takes effect. So, and he explains, Mi loy Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgede, didn't Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgede say, loy binan daita. For gedishin, you don't need the das of the wife to divorce her. Ochanami loy binan daita. So here as well, if he's giving it to her and he's sort of tricking her and giving her this, telling her that it's a shtar chayv, nevertheless she's divorced. So the Gemara asks on this halacha that Rav said, Pshita, isn't this obvious? Why should it be any different than a chareshes? Whether she's a chareshes or he gives it to her and doesn't tell her what he's giving her, it's the same thing. You don't need any das. What's the chiddush here? So that answers the Gemara. I would think to say, once the husband uses such language, he's telling his wife, here, take this shtar chayv. What does that mean? Betuli batle. That means that he is being mevatel the get. He's saying that this is not a get. He's saying clearly that it's something else. It's another document. Kamash Malon, therefore, Rava said that no, we don't consider this to be a bittul of the get, because if he was interested in being mevatel the get, those eidim that he told before, look, I'm giving my wife a get, he would have told them that it's not really a get. So therefore we know he wasn't mevatel it. Why is he saying such a thing? That he's giving her a shtar chayiv and not a get. The reason he's saying this mishum kisufa is out of embarrassment. He's embarrassed to tell his wife in the face, here, this is your get, so therefore he's telling her this is a shtar chayiv. But really, it's a get, and there's no concern about bittul a get. So this is a chiddush that Rava is saying that you cannot learn from Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgede, but the point that you don't need the das of an isha for the Gedishin, that he learned that from Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgede, and the same thing applies in this case. Val katana bas Yisrael, the next case the Mishnah said, a katana, that's a bas Yisrael and marries a kohen, and her whole marriage is midrabanan, so she can eat truma midrabanan. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah is switching the case. It started off talking about a chareshes that's married minatayra to the husband, and now it switches from a chareshes to a katana. Why is this? My timer. Why don't we say that the same thing is that if the kohen is married to this chareshes, that she could eat truma? And says the Gemara, gzeire shema yachal cheresh bechareshes, because we're afraid that what happens is, if we're going to allow a pikeach, a regular sane person that's married to a chereshes, that the wife should be able to eat the truma, so what happens if a cheresh is married to a chereshes? A cheresh that's married to a chereshes, this is not a marriage at all. Minatayra, there's no marriage over here. So we're concerned that in such a case, he may give her to eat the truma. So therefore they were geyser that there should be no truma by a chereshes, that she doesn't eat the truma from her husband, the kohen. Okay, so the Gemara will continue. This is not yet the point here of the answer, but the Gemara asks in this right away. V'leichel, what's the problem? What happens if this chareshes will eat this truma from the husband, which is a cheresh? Cotton, oichel nevelesu. This could be compared to a cotton, to a child that's eating nevelis, that eats not kosher food. And what's the halacha when a cotton eats nevelis? So Rashi here brings the halacha that by a cotton that eats nevelis, there's one opinion that says that even the bezin that sees this is not obligated to separate it from eating it. So the same thing over here should be also regarding truma. What are you saying? That there's a concern that the chareshes will be married to a cheresh, and she has really no right to eat any truma at all, but she's going to go and eat the truma. So what? If she's a chareshes, she has no das, and we're not obligated to separate her from eating that truma. And Rashi says this would even be truma minatayra. We should not make a special gzeira for this. So the Gemara answers, no, what our concern really is, gzeira shema yachal cheresh bepekachas. What happens if a cheresh is married to a pekachas? So this is also not a marriage minatayra, because he's a cheresh. And she is a regular basdas. She's fully sane. And now you're going to make a mistake and think that over here she can eat the truma, even though it's not a proper marriage. So again, if you're going to say that a chareshes that's married to a kohen, which is a pikeach, could eat truma, even truma midrabanan, then you may confuse this and say in the reverse case with a cheresh and a pikachas that she could eat the truma. And over here, it definitely is a problem. She's a pikachas; she's not allowed to eat the truma. Frag the Gemara v'lechol betrume derabanan. Why shouldn't we say that she should be allowed to eat truma midrabanan? Just like we said before in the Mishnah b'negei to a ketana that got married, that she could eat the truma midrabanan, even though the whole marriage is midrabanan, but the rabbanan allowed her to eat truma midrabanan. So over here as well, we should allow the truma midrabanan by a cheresh and a pikacha. She should be allowed to eat truma midrabanan. And says the Gemara, gzeire shema osi leechuli betruma deiraisa. There's a gzeire that she may come to eat even truma minatayra. That's our concern when you get to a cheresh that's married a pikachas. But Rashi explains, but that's only a gzeire b'negei to a cheresh married to a pikachas. But on the other hand, if we allow a ketana to eat truma midrabanan, we're not concerned that what may happen is that a katan will marry a gedola, and this gedola might come to eat truma minatayra. And the reason is because there is no marriage for a katan. There's never a marriage for a katan. There's a marriage for a ketana. There's a marriage for a chareshes. A father can marry them off. But for a katan, there's no marriage. So there's no concern that if you're going to allow a ketana to eat from her husband a kain, which is a gadol, the reverse may happen, that you may confuse it with a katan that's married to a gedola, and she's not allowed to eat any truma at all. But Mashenke, when you get to a cheresh and a pikachas, over here, it is possible that it should happen that a pikachas midrabanan gets married to a cheresh, and she may eat truma midrabanan, and then even truma d'oraisa. That's our concern. Sagt the Gemara weiter. The next case in the Mishnah was Valan Meirish Hagazel Shabonai. A beam that a Gazlan built into his house, he doesn't have to return it. He returns the money. Tana Rabbana, we learned in the Braise, Gazel Meirish Shabonai Bibira. You stole this beam and you built it into your house. Beishamai Oimrim, Beishamai say, Mekakea Kala Bira, you have to take apart the whole house. Kula, Umachser Meirish Labailov. In order to get out this beam, to return to the owner. That's the mitzvah of Eshev Exela Shagazel. Beisil say, Ein loy ela d'mei meirish b'lvad. Chachamim were mesakin that the meirish, the beam, belongs to you, and you only give back the money of it. Mishum takanas hashavim. They instituted it to make it easier for him to do tshuva. Valchatas agzula chulu. Then the Mishnah said, you stole a behemoth, and you were makdish it as a korban chatas. So the Mishnah said, chatas agzula. So if it's loy noida l'rabim, if nobody knows that this is a stolen carbon, that it should be mechaper. And the Mishnah said, Mipnei tikkun hamizbeach. So here the Gemara has two opinions what the Mishnah is saying. Ula says, Dvar Torah. Minat Torah, the halacha here should be as follows. Bein noida, bein loy noida. Whether it's known that it's stolen, whether it's not known, eina mechaperes. That this carbon should not be mechaper at all. My time, why? Because Yiyush kidi loikani, when he stole it, behema, even if the owner was meyayish, he gave up on it. And usually there's a halacha that Yiyush is kaina. Yiyush itself creates a certain right of ownership, but nevertheless, all it says, no, Yiyush alone is not kaina. So therefore over here, when you stole this animal does not belong to you. So if it doesn't belong to you, you can't bring it as a carbon. Rashi brings the pasuk by a carbon, says, karbon noi, has to be yours. So over here, the Yiyush will not be kaina. So ma ta mamru loy noida mechaperes. So when it says in our Mishnah, but if nobody knows about the fact that it's stolen, so Chachamim said that it will be mechaper. So in other words, Chachamim basically with the koyach of Hefke, Bezna Hefke, said that this carbon should belong to you, and therefore it will be mechaper. Why did they say so? Shalayiyo kaina matzevim. So that the kayanim that are eating from the basar of this carbon should not be sad. That they're eating from the carbon, and it's really not a carbon at all. So that's the reason for the takana.
Let's say they don't know.
They shouldn't be sad. Oh, they're going to find out later. What happens if they find out about this, and then it comes out that this wasn't a behemoth of a kachim b'chlal, it was chulin, that was shechter in the azara, and they're not allowed to eat it. So they were over iser. So Rabbana said to Ule, this is the reason is for the kainim, that the kainim shouldn't be sad. The Mishnah clearly says the reason is that it's for the sake of the mizbeach. So Ule explained, even the kainim matzevim, if the kainim are sad, when they eat this carbon that it turns out to be chulin, nimtzum mizbeach bottle. So what happens? The kainim, whenever they're bringing a carbon, they're going to always be suspicious. Maybe this is not really, maybe the owner stole it, maybe it's not a good carbon, and they're not going to want to bring karbanis. So it comes out that the mizbeach bottle. The kainim are not going to want to take a risk to bring the karbanis on the mizbeach if they can't 100% verify that this is a good carbon. So therefore, Chachamim were misakin that in a case where it's unknown and it's hard for them to verify, so let the carbon be kosher, and the kainim should not be sad. They'll want to bring the karbanis. So here, let me just go back a second regarding what the Gemara here said, that the basis of this whole pshat in the Mishnah is ula that says that Yiyush is not kaina. So even though you stole it, and usually there's a halacha of Yiyush that it becomes yours, but ula says no, Yiyush is not kaina. The Gemara's lashon is Yiyush kidi. Yiyush alone is not kaina. So there's a few pshatim in this. Rashi over here emphasizes that when it says Yiyush is not kaina, that doesn't mean that ula holds that Yiyush is never kaina. The MS ula holds that Yiyush is kaina. Rashi says Yiyush le'inyan hakrava. Dafka regarding a carbon, because by a carbon the Torah uses the term karbonai, so Yiyush is a kinyan, but not enough of a kinyan to be yours for a carbon. That's Rashi's pshat. Taisus over here says that even though the Gemara uses the term Yiyush kedilei kani, the issue is not really the kinyan. Taisus Rabbeinu Tam brings from other places where you see that Ola holds that Yiyush is kaina, and not only that, did he later in Taisus over here adds that it's really not only Yiyush alone. It's Yiyush together with Shini Rishus, because the moment you're makdish, this behemoth for the carbon, so it changes ownership. It goes from being a chulin behemoth to becoming hektish. So there's Yiyush and Shini Rishus taking place over here. But nevertheless, the reason why, when the Gemara says leikani, what the Gemara means is, it's still not going to be good enough to be allowed to bring a carbon for this, and the reason is because it's a mitzvah haba ba'aveda. A mitzvah haba ba'aveda, this is taking a carbon which was stolen and using it for a carbon. It's possible because of being a mitzvah haba ba'aveda. That's the real reason that the Gemara means, according to Taisus.
What's the band? Because taking the element only for the kain, or taking an that
it's for the mizbeach. That's the Gemara's maskana. It's for the mizbeach.
So it's still a carbon for the person, or it's not a carbon?
It is. The carbon is mechaper, and it's a good carbon.
Why is the carbon mechaper?
Because if otherwise,
you meditate it for the kain. I understand that.
Yeah. No.
Why
should it be mechaper for him? I think it goes together. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it goes together. Once we accept the carbon and it's mechaper for the mizbeach, and the kainim could eat for it, so the carbon is accepted fully for the person as well. Rav Yehuda says the opposite pshat in the Mishnah. Dvar teire, minat teire, the halacha is bein noida, bein loy noida, whether it's known about the gzela, whether it's not known, mechaperes. Really, the carbon should be mechaper. My time, what's the reason? Yiyush kedi kani, because the yiyush is kaina. So again, two pshatim in this. Either the pshat is because he holds that the yiyush is kaina and it's yours, that's the main point here, or the main point that Rav Yehuda is trying to say is that there's no issue in this case of a mitzvah baba aveda. As Mefarshim explained over here, since the aveda already happened before, you stole it and you were kaina it, and now you're bringing it as a carbon, that's not called mitzvah baba aveda. It's not mamish b'shas ma'isa with the aveda itself. Now, matam omru noida mechaperes. What's the reason why the Mishnah says that when the fact that it's stolen is known, it should not be mechaper? So people shouldn't say that, look, the mizbeach is eating from karbanis which are stolen. So therefore the chachamim were misakin that it should be mechaper, that you should be kainet and you should be mechaper. Again? That it should not be mechaper. That it's yes. Okay, thank you. It should not be mechaper. So people shouldn't say that it's the mizbeach is eichel gezelis. So the Gemara now asks, bish loy melule. Now according to Ulle, we understand in the Mishnah hainu diktani chatas. So the Mishnah says that this whole halacha was said regarding a carbon chatas, because by carbon chatas there's the basar of that carbon that the kain eats. So that was the whole point. Ulle said we don't want the kain to be sad about this, and then they won't want to bring karbanis. El Rav Yehuda, ma irya chatas. Why are we saying dafka regarding a chatas? Afilo oila nami. The same halacha should apply to a carbon oila as well. Any carbon. It has nothing to do with the kainim. Even a carbon oil that's being brought completely on the mizbeach, we don't want that if it's known that it's stolen, that people should say that the mizbeach is eating from stolen goods. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Loi mi boya kama. The Mishnah is saying an even bigger chiddush here. Loi mi boya oila de kolel he. Needless to say, carbon oil which is fully burnt in the mizbeach, that there's a concern that people will say that the mizbeach is eating from a carbon stolen. Elafil chatas nami, even the chatas as well. The chaylev the dam hu de salik legabe mizbeach, that the chaylev and the dam, only the fats and the blood goes in the mizbeach. Ve'edoch kainam achli, and the rest the kainam achli le the kainam eating it. So you may say that over here there's not such a concern. Nevertheless, there's still a gzeira. Over here, Chacham were also misakin that it should not be mechaper, that people shouldn't say that the mizbeach is eating gzeilas. Another detail the Gemara asks now from the lashon of the Mishnah. Tnan, what did the Mishnah say? Al chata sagzula shaloi noidol rabim. The carbon, when it's not known that it was stolen, shehi mechaperes, that it will be mechaper, mipnei tikkun mizbeach. Chacham were misaken that it should be mechaper, and this was the tikkun for the sake of the mizbeach. That's what it says in our Mishnah. It says the Gemara, bishloi melo nicha. According to Ole, that's understood, because Ole says that the whole concern over here is that the kohen won't want to bring karbanis, and therefore the mizbeach won't have karbanis. So the whole tikkun on mizbeach was that it should be mechaper. But according to Rav Yehuda, it should have said the opposite. According to Rav Yehuda, the whole takana was that when it's noida, when it's known that it's stolen, that the mizbeach is not mechaper. So it shouldn't say that the mizbeach is eating from stolen goods. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Hachin nami ka'ama. This is really what the Mishnah Taka means to say. Loi noida mechaperes. If it's not known, then it's going to be mechaper. But from that you understand that noida eina mechaperes. If it's known that it was stolen, then it's not mechaper. And on that, the Mishnah is saying mipnei tikkun mizbeach. That's rectifying the issue over here regarding the mizbeach, that people shouldn't say that the mizbeach is eating from gzela. That's how you read the Mishnah. Masiv Rav asks the shaila. Gonav v'hiktish. If a person steals an animal and he was maktish it, like the case we're speaking about here. V'achakach tovach machar. But after he was makdish it, he did not bring it as a carbon, but then he went and shechted it for himself, or he went and sold it to someone. What's usually the halacha with tovach machar? When you steal a behemoth and you either shecht it or steal it, or sell it, so you have to pay 4 or 5 times as much as its original value, whether it's a seh or a lashon the pasuk over there. Shoyrei seh, correct. So over here, he did both. He stole it and then tavach machar. But here the Braisa says mishalem tashlume kefil. He only is going to have to pay the payment of gzela, which he paid double. But he does not pay the payment of 4 or 5 times as much above chamisha, because by the time that he shechted it, so it was already hektish. He was already makdish it before. So for that he doesn't have to pay. On this we learned in Abraisa, if he took this behemoth that he was makdish, he stole it, and he was makdish it, and now he shechted it outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Now to shecht a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash, he says shchutei chutz yechayev kares for this. Okay, so he went and shechted this outside. Ki hay gavne, in such a case, onush kares. He will get the punishment of kares. So the Gemara asks on this: if you're going to say like Ula said that Yush is not kaina, so such a kind of carbon is not accepted inside the Beis HaMikdash. So then, even if you're going to say that Chachamim were misakin in the Beis HaMikdash, that the carbon should be accepted in a case where it's unknown, but kares mayavidite over here, if you're shechting it outside of the Beis HaMikdash, why should there be any kares? The whole halacha of shchutei chutz is a carbon that if you bring it inside in the same way inside the Beis HaMikdash, it would be a good carbon. When you bring that outside the Beis HaMikdash, a person's chayav kares for this. But if the carbon inside the Beis HaMikdash minat Torah is not a good carbon because the yish is not kaina, it's not yours b'chlal. So if so, bringing it outside of the Beis HaMikdash in this way should not be kaina either. That's the Gemara Shaila. So Rashi explains the Shaila over here of the Gemara is only from this halacha of shchutei chutz, because as Rashi explained before, that really when the Gemara says yish is not kaina, even Ula agrees yish is kaina. This is Rashi's shit here on the sugya. Ula agrees yish is kaina. Elamai regarding a carbon, we said it says in the Torah carbon noi, for a carbon yish is not kaina. So regarding the arba v'chamisha, the fact that you don't have to pay the arba v'chamisha, the Gemara doesn't ask for that, because for that yish is kaina. But for the carbon, you're telling me that yish is not kaina, so it's not a good carbon inside. You shouldn't be chayav to bring kares if you for the shchutei chutz when you shecht it outside. Amar Rav Sheizvi, so Rav Sheizvi answers kares midivreim. Over here, when it says kares, it doesn't mean kares minat Torah. It means kares midrabanan. Achi kualei. So when they heard this answer from him, they laughed at this answer. Kares midivreim mi ikke. Do we ever find such a thing that the chachamim give a person a chi of kares? There's midrabanan, a concept of kares. Kares is a punishment only for isam minat Torah. There's no such a thing as kares for isam midrabanan. So Rava saw that they were laughing at his answer. Rava said to them, you didn't understand his answer. Gavre Rabba Milseh. A great person said something. Do not laugh on this. What he meant to say is as follows. Kares, this is a kares minat Torah. Sha'al yidei divreyem basaloi. He's chayiv in this kares minat Torah because of what Chachamim instituted. What does this mean? Aikmua Rabbanan Bereshusei, Chachamim with the koyach of Hefker Bezn Hefker are saying that this behemoth that he stole and really minat Torah, it's not karbonai, it's not his. But nevertheless, Chachamim did say that it should become his, in order that now it should be his, and he will be chayav on kares minat Torah. So similar to what we said before, when he brings the when he brings the carbon inside the Beis HaMikdash, so Chachamim instituted that it should be his, and it should be mechaper for the tikkun of the mizbeach. Over here, for the shchutei chutz, Chachamim were mesaken that he should be kainet, and therefore he will be chayav kares minat Torah. Amar Rave, so now Rave said about this over here, ha vadei kamiboyeli. But this is a shaila that I have about this case over here. When we say that Chachamim were mesakin for this behemoth, that you kaina this behemoth, whether it should be mechaper or you kaina to be chayiv in the shchutei chutz, the question is, ki ekmua rabbanan b'reshusei mishas keneva. Do I say that Chachamim placed this behemoth into the gazlin's possession retroactively? That now that he was makdish and he's bringing it as a carbon, do I say that retroactively from the time of Geneva this behemoth is his? Oy mishas tekdisha. Or only if he went and it was makdish as a carbon, then Chachamim were mesaking with the koyach of Hefker Bez and Hefker that it becomes his. Lamai nafkimene, what's the practical difference? Ligizisea of lodisea. From the time of the gzela till the time when he's makdish it, if there was the wool of the behemoth that he shored off, the sharing of the behemoth, so that he took it for himself before he was makdish it, or the vlodisea, if it gave birth. What's the story with that wool, with that animal? Does it belong to him or not? If you're going to say Chacham wa Misakin that it's his from the gzela, so then it's his. If not, so that he has to give back to the owner. So what's the halacha? So Hadam Rav, after Rav himself asked the Shaila, he answered and said, Mistavre, it's logical to say Mishasek Deisha. Only from the time of when he's actually makdish it, that's when they said it belongs to him, so that it should be accepted as a carbon on the Mizbeach, or that it should be chai for Shchuti Chutz, but not before. It doesn't become his retroactively from the time of the Gzela, that now he can keep the wool or the animals that were born here. Shalei Chayta Niskar. Because they don't, why should this takana be in such a way that this sinner that's stealing should gain out of this, that he can keep the wool or the behemoth that's born? Another Mishnah here, dealing with halachas that are based on the takanas of Chachamim. And this is the Mishnah that brings up a subject which will lead us into the whole famous sugya of Kamtze, Bar Kamtze, the Chorma of the Beis HaMikdash, and so on. Leihaya sekriken biYehuda baharuge milchama. The halacha of sekriken did not apply in Yehuda, which is in Eretz Yisrael, in the times of Haruge Milchama, in the times when there was the wars, when they were killing the Yidden. So what's this inyan of a sekriken? A sekriken is goyim that were murderers that would come to Yidden and they would kill them. Unless you would give them your property. That's how you could redeem yourself, not to be killed. Sure. Rashi here brings a sekriken. It sounds like here from Rashi. It says that Beferish and other of the Rishonim that sekriken is saw, karka, take my land, bepidya nafshay, to redeem a soul. Sekriken is a combination of these words. So, Kitzur, the point of here is that this sekriken is threatening a Yid with his life unless he gives him his property. So we'll see in the Gemara the halacha that applies by a sekriken. So in the times when there was the war by the Churban Beis HaMikdash, and then Rashi says when Titus came to destroy the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim and in Yehuda, the other sections of Eretz Yisrael, so then the halacha of the sekriken did not apply. Mei aruge mulchama ve'elech, from after this time of this mulchama, so then yesh ba sekriken. The halacha of the sekriken does apply. Okay, now the Mishnah here will bring what's the halacha of the sekriken that does apply after the time of the mulchama, and we'll understand what it means that during the time of the mulchama that halacha does not apply. So here's the halacha of the sekriken. Keitzad, what's the halacha? Lokach misekriken. What happens if a Yid goes and buys this property from this sekriken, from this guy that stole the property from you? So you buy it now from this guy. And v'chaza v'lokach mi balabayis. And then after you buy it from this guy, then you go ahead and you go to the original owner and you buy it from him. Mekchay bottle. So the sale is worthless. Why is the sale worthless? Because the owner that sold it to you, he didn't really sell it to you willingly. He didn't agree to the sale at all. He's only selling it to you because he's afraid that if he's not going to agree to sell it, so then the guy is going to come back and kill him. So that's why he sold it. Or, Rashi says another pshat, perhaps this Yid is agreeing to sell it to this other Yid that's buying it from the sekriken because he wants the property to be in the hand of this other Yid, not in the hand of the sekriken. He can't deal with the sekriken. He has no chance to get it back from him. From this other Yid that's buying it from the sekriken, he may once be able to get it back from him. So therefore the whole sale is bottled.
Sekriken is the goy.
Again?
Sekriken is the goy.
Yeah. That's when you bought it first from the sekriken. But mi balabayis, if you went and paid first the owner for this property, and then v'chaza v'lokach misekriken, then afterwards you went and bought it from the sekriken, so then nekchay kayim, so then the sale takes effect. Once you paid the owner before and the sekriken wasn't there, and you bought it from him legitimately, and then afterwards you bought it from the sekriken, so then the mekach takes effect. This is the sakana. This is the takana that is chachamu misakim b'negeya to a sekriken. Okay, so that's what the Mishnah was saying before, that beharuge mulchama, in the time of the war, there was no such a takana. In the time of the war, if you bought a field from the sekriken, so over there, the sale will either way take effect, because over there, in the time of the war, mamish, so the halacha is, agav oinse gomer makni, because they were very afraid from the goyim in the time of the war, so then, if you buy from the Yid this property, we say that because he's so afraid from this guy, he's gama or makni, he agrees to the sale, and the sale either way takes effect. Weiter, the Mishnah brings a similar halacha here. When there's a property, there's two people that have a connection to it, lakach mina ish. You bought a property from the husband. Now this is a husband, he's married, and the properties, there's a shibud on this property is for the ksubah. It's designated for the wife that she would collect her ksubah from this property. So he went and bought the property first from the husband. And then the chazav lakach mina isha. Then he went and paid the wife for this, that she should also agree that he could buy it, and it shouldn't be any more meshubit to the ksubah. So mekche bottle. In such a case, the whole sale is bottle, and the reason is because she could say that I only did this because I didn't want my husband to be upset at me. What could I do? My husband wants to sell it, so I didn't want to get him upset. But really, she didn't willingly agree to the sale at all. But if the case was that he bought it first, Mina Isha, if he first bought it from the wife, and she already agreed before, the husband's not there, and she already agreed in advance, and then then he goes and buys it from the husband, so then the sale takes effect. Okay, now the Mishnah goes back to the story of the Sekrikin. Zu Mishnah Rishayna. The halacha that we said before regarding the Sekrikin, that was the original halacha. But Bezdin Shalach Reyem, then came the Bezdin of a later generation, of later Tanoim, Omru, they said, Halekeach Misekrikin, if you buy a property from a Sekrikin, Noisen Labailem Revia. So then the sale does take effect, but you have to give the owner a quarter of the price of what you paid for this property. So you have to give that price, you have to give that payment to the owner of the property. Chachamu Mishayer, that when you buy from a Sekrikin, he lowers the price a quarter of the value you didn't pay the Sekrikin for this field. So that quarter that you gain by buying it from the Sekrikin, you should have to go and give it to the owner. We'll see in the Gemara, the reason why Chachamim were masakin this is because if they're going to say that the sale doesn't take effect, Chachamim saw what happened is nobody was interested in redeeming and buying this property from the Sekrikin, because any Yid says to himself, why should I buy it from the Sekrikin? If I buy it from the Sekrikin, Chachamim say that the sale is bottled anyways. Even if I'm going to go ahead and pay the owner for it, the sale is still going to be bottled. So no one wants to redeem these properties from the Sekrikin. So Chachamim were misakin that you could buy these properties from these Sekrikin as long as you pay the difference. You got it for a cheaper price, pay the difference to the original owner.
So if you pay both of them, it's no good. If you pay only, what was
No, this is a new takana. Again, this is a new takana, Chacham or Mesakin, in a later generation, that you could buy the property from the Sekrikin, as long as you pay the original owner the difference because of the cheaper value that you got it for.
What was the old takana?
The old takana was that once you bought it from the Sekrikin first, even if you pay the original owner the full price, the king still doesn't take effect. You can't buy it from a Sekrikin then.
So here you get, so the new takana was easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Avol yesh biyodon likach. Hey, avol yesh biyodon likach. Hein kaidmin l'cholodam. If the original owner has money to go and buy off his own property that the Sekrikin stole from him, they have the right to buy before anyone else. If the original owner comes and says, "Don't buy my property. I have money. I want to buy it myself," they come before anyone else. Now, Rebbe Hoishev Bezdin v'nimnu. Then it came a later generation, and Rebbe sat down at Bezdin, and they took account, and they came to the following takone: Shem Shasa b'fnei Sekrikin Shnei Masa Chaydish. Once the property that was stolen here from the Yid remains in this Sekrikin's possession for 12 months, then Kol Hakaydem Likach Zacha. Then whoever wants comes first and buys the property. The original owner doesn't have the priority to go and buy it before anyone else. But Abel, like we said before, Naisen Labaylam Revia. He got it for a cheaper value. Let him pay the difference of that quarter that he got it cheaper for to the original owner. Okay, the Gemara here explains the simple pshat of the words of the Mishnah. When you read the simple words of the Mishnah, what does it say? It says in the Mishnah that in the times of Haruge Mulchame, there were no Sekrikin. Afterwards, there were Sekrikin. That's the translation of the words of the Mishnah. So the Gemara asks, Hashte b'haruge mulchame lehoye b'sekrikin. You're saying that in the times of the war, when they were killing Yidden, there were no Sekrikin that were taking properties from Yidden. Me haruge mulchame ve'elech yesh b'sekrikin. From after the time of the war, then there were Sekrikin. Rav Yehuda says, like I touched before in the Mishnah, leidanu ba din Sekrikin kama. What the Mishnah meant to say is that in the times of the war, the din of the Sekrikin did not apply. In that time, if you bought it from the Sekrikin, the kinyan always took effect. The whole difference of when you bought it from a Sekrikim first, that the Kenyan does not take effect, that was only after the times of the war. During the times of the war, we say that he was Geimer or Makne, and the Kenyan does take effect. The Amar Abasi, the one says this is based on the following thing, because Abasi said, Gimel Gzeiros Gozru, there were three different decrees that the Romans, when they came, they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. When Titus came and destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, there were three Gzeiros, three time periods. Gzeiros the Kamaisa, the first Gzeira was, Kol D'loi Kotel Likteluhu, that any Roman that sees a Yid and he doesn't kill a Yid, so this Roman will be killed. So they were mamish out to kill Yid. So that was the first Gzeira. Mitzias, then there was a later time period, and that they said, Kol de Kotel, anyone that kills a Yid, Laisi Arba Zuz, he has to pay 4 Zuz for this, which is basically saying how cheap the blood of a Yid is. He has to pay 4 Zuz. So there's some other Rishonim that actually guide us the opposite, that if you kill a Yid, you get paid 4 Zuzim. Then Basraise, later on, they said, Kol de Kotel, anyone that kills a Yid, Likteluhu, he will be killed. So then the Gzeira stopped, and Adarabah, they said, whoever kills a Yid gets killed. So now, Hilkoch, therefore, Kamaise umitziase, in the first time period, and even in the middle time period, Kivin the Kotli, because this is a time period that the Goyim were killing Yidden so easily, left and right, so Agavoin say, Gomara Makni, because this Sekrikin now has your property, and the Yidden are so afraid of Goyim, anyone that buys the property of this Sekrikin, the original owner gave up on it. It's an oinus. He knows he's not getting back his property, so he's Goyim Makni. This is halacha by a sale, even when you force a person to sell something. But if he knows that it's forced and he's not getting it back, he relinquishes it, he gives it up. So the Kenya takes effect. But then later on, when the Gzeira was the reverse, that they said if you kill a Yid, you get killed. So Amriya Idna Lishka. So a Yid says to himself that I'm not really agreeing to the sale, that the Yid over here is buying it from this Sekrikin. What the Yid is saying to himself is, Idna Lishka, let him buy it from the Sekrikin today. Tomorrow I'm going to bring him to court and I'm going to get it back for myself. So he still has hope of getting it back. It's not a real inus. So therefore the sale does not take effect at all. Okay, here Amar Rabbi Yechon, and this begins the sugi of Kamsa by Kamsa, the stories. We'll see Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow.